This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. Yes, but it didn't appear for a long time because only when the three stars form a line and shoot down the power of the stars can the law of time be opened a line. I'm very curious, why do you want to find that astral wind? Anything, even if it's a soul like me that can take human form, will be directly eroded away. If you want to cultivate with the help of the wind, I advise you to give up on that idea, lest you die. Although Yuan Gaohan did not have a good impression of Yunxiao, he still cherished his talent, so he could not help but try to persuade him. Yunxiao was not very confident either. The point was that the Divine Realm tablet had run out of spirit qi. Even if he had the breathing earth, it was still unknown whether it could resist the primordial astral wind and collect it. I won't do something I'm not confident in. Since it will appear every 24 hours, there's no need to rush. Let's observe first. He walked to a broken pillar and sat down cross-legged, waiting quietly. Yuan Gaohan became more and more curious about Yunxiao. Even he could not keep such a calm mind. And as they gradually got to know each other, Yunxiao kept giving him a familiar feeling, but he could not remember what it was. What surprised him even more was that as soon as Yunxiao sat down under the stone pillar, he became silent and blended into the surrounding environment, reaching a state of natural Tao and the unity of man and nature. All of this was hard for Yuan Gaohan to understand and accept. The words and actions of the young man in front of him were the same as those old monsters who had lived for hundreds of years. However, under the divine sense of his eighth-layered soul, the other party was definitely not possessed by any spiritual sense and was definitely not even 20 years old. He's actually so bold as to cultivate without worry. Isn't he afraid that I'll take the opportunity to kill him? Yuan Gaohan found it hard to understand. Even if the other party had a 9th-rank soul-devouring flag in his hand, in this kind of environment, his 8th-rank soul power's full power attack was almost 100% able to take his life. What made him so bold? Could it be that there's a hidden card that I can't detect? Yuan Gaohan couldn't help but want to make a move a few times, but he eventually restrained himself. He didn't know what was going on. Was it out of fear or admiration for this young man? After a violent struggle in his heart, he finally endured it and sat down cross-legged. After Yunxiao sat down, he went straight into the Divine Realm tablet. The world inside was getting darker and darker, like a deflating balloon. All the mountains, rivers, and plants were withered, as if it was the end of the world. His brows were tightly furrowed. The situation was worse than he had expected. This was probably the situation. Although he had broken the armillary sphere's axis, he had also fallen into a desperate situation, as if it was the end of the world. With a wave of his hand, Yunxiao threw a large number of primordial stones into the air, all of which he had extorted from Qing Luo and Shan Wudi. They piled up in the air and formed a huge cube, floating in the air like a small mountain. Even if all of the ore veins that had insufficient spiritual energy were refined, they might not have so much. He began to carve out a formation around the vast amount of primordial stones. Every stroke was very careful and all of them were suspended around the primordial stones. Golden light flashed and spread out in all directions, causing the sky to be filled with golden light. After doing all that, Yunxiao willed a few beams of light to land beside him. They were the people in the Divine Realm tablet, all of whom were martial emperors. Duan Yu, Yu Jiolin, the 3 people from the Palace of Holy Fire, and even Situ Hang and Gu Yuesheng were summoned by him. They were baffled at first, but then their eyes lit up when they saw the shocking Yuan stone. You really have a way. If you don't get some primeval stones, I'm going to be a dried-up man. Duan Yu laughed and rushed forward. The astonishing Yuan qi that was emanating from the beast made him want to take a few bites of it. After a few breaths, he felt refreshed. But, before he could take a few steps, he was stopped by Yunxiao. He blew his beard and glared at him as he said, "Why? Isn't this primeval stone for everyone to split?" The rest of the people were also confused, but they were more concerned about when they would be released. Except for Duan Yu, everyone else had been captured by him. Although there was no lack of cultivation resources here, what was the point of cultivating if he had to stay in this damn place for the rest of his life? Even Gu Yuesheng, who had always been unruly, could not help but feel a little scared during this long period of time, and he was really afraid that Yunxiao would lock him up for a lifetime. Yunxiao's eyes swept across everyone's faces like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. There's something wrong with the Divine Realm tablet this time. I'll need everyone to work together to help me absorb the immemorial astral wind. These primordial stones will be used to maintain the operation of the Divine Realm tablet. I'll teach you how to operate this formation now. Everyone was stunned and didn't understand. Only Gu Yuesheng's expression changed drastically. He took a deep breath and said in horror, "Immemorial astral wind? That all-conquering wind elements. The immemorial astral wind?" Yunxiao's face was expressionless as he nodded and said, "That's right, it's the immemorial astral wind. Although the Divine Realm tablet has lost all its spiritual qi, I have the Earth's breathing earth, which can fix everything. With everyone's help, there's still a certain degree of confidence in absorbing the immemorial astral winds." Gu Yuesheng was shocked and mumbled, "Breathing Earth Swan and I, why should we help you? When are you going to let us out?" He asked the question that everyone was most concerned about, and all of them looked at Yunxiao with pitiful expressions. No one dared to be arrogant again. "It depends on your performance," Yunxiao said with a smile. "If the absorption of the immemorial astral wind goes smoothly, I can let you all leave. However, if you fail, you can rest assured and break through to the peak of the martial supreme realm here. You can break through the void and leave on your own." His cold voice resounded in everyone's hearts. Then, they heard the sound of people gulping. Really? Gu Yuesheng did not believe that Yunxiao would let them go so easily. "I always keep my word," Yunxiao snorted. "I'm just afraid that you won't leave." It was a vast starry sky outside. Even if he let them all out, they wouldn't be able to return to the realm of heavenly martial arts. At that time, they would still follow him obediently, and he wouldn't be breaking his promise. "Good. You said it yourself." Gu Yuesheng was overjoyed. Although the risk of absorbing the immemorial astral wind was extremely high, there was at least a glimmer of hope. Being locked up here and only having time to pass every day was simply driving him crazy. "How are we going to cooperate with you? Tell us clearly, don't make any mistakes." This time, he was even more serious and anxious than Yunxiao. The rest of the people were also listening carefully. This was their only hope of obtaining freedom. It was much easier than he had imagined to teach them the formation. In the end, he took out some vitality stones and medicinal pills, allowing everyone to recover to their best condition and wait for orders. Meanwhile, Yunxiao returned to his body, took out some primordial stones, and slowly absorbed them while chatting with Yuan Gaohan. He had been reincarnated for 15 years and knew nothing about the changes in the peak of the continent's experts. He immediately got a lot of information from Yuan Gaohan. Yuan Gaohan did not hide any secrets from Yunxiao, and he told him everything he knew. He also found it very strange that he talked to Yunxiao like he was talking to an old friend, without any barriers of age, cultivation base, or status. At the same time, what shocked him was Yunxiao's speed of absorbing primordial energy. The primordial stones he took out were all mid-grade primordial stones, and they would turn into a pile of powder without any primordial energy when he held them in his hand. The shining white primeval stones were like large pieces of fat meat, being swallowed by his palm. Yunxiao was just bored, so he seized every minute to cultivate. Otherwise, if thousands of primeval stones exploded and were absorbed in one breath, his jaw would drop even more. But even so, Yuan Gaohan was still shocked. The primordial stone powder scattered on the ground, and when he swept his divine sense over it, he could sense that there was almost no primordial qi left. The speed and cleanliness of the absorption of elemental energy made him shocked. He said in a deep voice, "What method did you use to be able to absorb a vitality stone so quickly and quickly?" Yunxiao had just absorbed half of a primordial stone when he was stunned for a moment, then he smiled and said, "Is there any way to do this? Isn't it just absorbing it into the meridians, circulating it around the body, and returning it to the dantian?" Yuan Gaohan frowned as he stared at Yunxiao's right hand and said slowly, "This method of yours seems to be extremely similar to a cultivation technique." Yunxiao's heart skipped a beat as he asked carefully, "What cultivation technique?" Yuan Gaohan raised his head and stared at Yunxiao's eyes for a while. They were as clear as crystal, without the slightest ripple. He was slightly startled. If this young man could still pretend under the gaze of his 8th-tier soul body, then he was really a monster of the ages. It seemed that he really didn't know, or maybe he was overthinking. One chi of creation technique.
Ha!
How could that be? Yun Shao gave a dry laugh, then said with a calm face, "I've heard of this cultivation method before. It's said that by cultivating this method, the speed of absorbing vital chi is several times faster than that of ordinary warriors, but it has long been lost." Yuan Gaohan licked his lips, seemingly envious of that kind of cultivation technique. "It's not lost. This cultivation technique was first cultivated by the army-shattering martial sovereign, Gu Feiyang. After Gu Feiyang died 15 years ago, at least a few of his disciples still managed to master this cultivation technique." Yunxiao's eyes flickered as he said with a smile, "Since this technique is so powerful and Gu Feiyang is dead, won't the Holy Region try to get his disciples to benefit everyone?" Yuan Gohan's expression changed slightly, a barely perceptible light flashing through his eyes as he said with a straight face, "Humph. The holy city of Misty Snow is the holy land supported by all martial artists in the world, gathering the righteousness of the world, punishing evil and promoting good. How could they do such a despicable thing as you said?" Yun Xiao's face darkened, and he snorted coldly with an undisguisable look of contempt. "Do you dare to guarantee what you just said? As long as you say dare, I will remember it in my heart and believe you." Yuan Gohan's old face blushed slightly as he said in embarrassment, "Humph. What does a kid know?" He raised his head and looked at the 3 great stars in the distance. His eyes gradually focused and he said, "Soon, get ready." Yun Shao looked over as well. The 3 stars of Feng Lang, Jade Man, and Big Dog suddenly became brighter than usual. The light yellow astral power was like a candle flame that was getting brighter and brighter. From their perspective, the 2 stars of Feng Lang and Yu Fu were completely hidden behind the large dog. The 3 stars gathered in a line, and it seemed to contain some kind of law. A powerful energy field spread out, and the surrounding was filled with starlight. Then, a beam of starlight shot out from the sealed wolf planet, which was the farthest place in the sky, connecting with the Jade Man and the Big Dog. It fell in a straight line, heading straight for the ruins where Yun Shao was standing. What kind of existence is he to use the stars in the sky and the ultimate universe to set up such a time seal? Even Yun Shao had a feeling of looking up at this moment, as if he had seen a bright door slowly opening for him at the peak of martial arts. That powerful beam of starlight crossed the starfield as if it was passing through layers of space and time. It represented the mighty power of the universe and the end of the world. Under the powerful shock of the beam of starlight, both Yun Shao and Yuan Gaohan felt that they were extremely insignificant, as if they were just a drop in the ocean. Under the starlight, the 2 of them seemed to be in a daze. Their shadows were elongated and reflected on the endless ruins. It was as if the endless night had merged into their thin shadows. Boom. Just as the beam of starlight was about to land on the ancient barrens, it seemed to be blocked by some force. It blasted into the void and bloomed. The dark night became as bright as day, causing one's eyes to hurt. At that moment, Yun Xiao's eyes instantly turned into crescent blood moons, distorting the powerful starlight power and reducing the impact on his body. Yuan Gaohan wasn't shocked, but rather happy. He cultivated the starlight soul refining technique, and under the circulation of the divine art, the power of the starlight was like hundreds of rivers pouring into the sea, enriching his body and making him feel extremely comfortable. Yun Shao frowned slightly when he sensed Yuan Gohan's joy. The cultivation method of the starlight soul refining technique flashed in his mind one by one. The husband's soul is pure and without impurities, which is called the truth, and the eternal existence of catastrophes is one of them. When the heavens obtain one, the sun, moon, and stars will shine brightly. A strange feeling rose within his body, as if the pouring starlight was no longer a harm, but instead a great tonic. His body surged with desire, eager to absorb the delicious food. At that moment, Yunxiao's eyes returned to normal. Starlight sprinkled on his body, and he closed his eyes slightly, letting his body feel the power. The star force seeped into his body through his skin, through his blood, flesh, and meridians. It actually made his soul feel peaceful and comfortable. The demonic dragon also opened its eyes and looked at the falling starlight in disbelief. It was indescribably happy and muttered to itself, "What an amazing cultivation technique. Gu Feiyang, you're too damn lucky. All the good things in the entire realm of heavenly martial arts have been taken by you. This starlight soul refining technique is comparable to your great expansion divine technique." Yun Xiao was overjoyed as well. Although the two were both soul training techniques, the great expansion divine technique could improve and restore one's soul power through one's own cultivation, which was equivalent to an internal cultivation technique, and could also be used in soul attacks. However, the Starlight Soul Tampering technique absorbed external forces to replenish soul power, similar to how martial artists absorbed primordial stones. In the cultivation of the soul, it was recognized that it was the most difficult thing to do, whether it was through one's own cultivation or by borrowing external objects. This was also the main reason why alchemists were rare and respected. With this technique that can absorb starlight to replenish soul power, I won't need soul-nourishing pills anymore. Yun Xiao muttered to himself, his face filled with joy. Beside him, Yuan Gohan's heart jolted, and he snapped out of his enjoyment. He looked at Yun Xiao in horror and found that the latter was also devouring the starlight like him. You, how did you learn it so quickly? Yun Xiao snorted with a contemptuous look on his face, is it fast? It's SOSO. Just SOSO. Yuan Gaohan was instantly driven mad, so agitated that he wanted to kill someone. His eyes almost spurted out fire as he roared, "Ma, just SOSO? Do you know how long it took me to absorb star power for the first time after I learned the Shin methodology?" Yun Xiao shrugged and spread his hands with a smile. Yuan Gaohan really wanted to bite him to death, so he roared, 10 months, it's been 10 months. He felt a little dizzy as he watched the starlight seep into Yun Xiao's skin. Moreover, I can only absorb a little star power after 10 months. How can I swallow it like you? No, this isn't a big gulp, it's a whale gulping. He clutched his head and roared, your swallowing speed is as fast as a whale's. You're so weak. From the moment he saw Yun Xiao, although he had been in all kinds of shock, his shock had reached its peak at this moment. He would not be surprised even if Yun Xiao said that he did not have a penis now. He had been immersed in the Starlight Soul Tampering technique for most of his life and had a deep understanding of it, which was why he could feel the horror of Yun Xiao's performance at this moment. It was no longer something that could be described as a genius. He felt that he should create a word to describe this feeling. If not for the fact that he did not have a physical body, he would have vomited blood from the extreme shock and depression. More than you? Yun Xiao frowned and snorted disdainfully. TSK. It means that I'm not as good as you. I thought you were better, but I'm not even as good as you, so why are you so excited? Pfft. Although Yuan Gaohan didn't have a physical body, he couldn't help but let out a breath, feeling the depressed qi in his body empty and his soul power greatly damaged. At this moment, the starlight in the void dispersed, revealing traces of grayish-white color in the endless black clothes. They circulated continuously, appearing and disappearing at times. The main body seemed to be squeezing in from another space. Yuan Gohan's expression changed greatly, and he couldn't care about anything else as he shouted, "They're here. The immemorial astral wind has appeared, and anyone who touches it will die and turn everything into dust." As his voice fell, a large amount of wind hissed in the vast sky. The originally quiet sky suddenly became violent, and the stars in the sky gradually dimmed and blurred. Although the two of them were over 10,000 meters away, they could still feel the powerful elemental power, especially Yun Xiao, whose body was rapidly growing wet. Yuan Gaohan shouted, "Quickly circulate your energy and regulate your breathing. You won't die as long as you don't seek death. It will only wreak havoc in the sky above this ancient baron's land and will disappear in about an hour." Yun Xiao's body emitted a bright light that lit up the surroundings as if it were daytime. His skin was as clear as snow and covered with tiny beads of water, which had seeped out of his skin and stayed under the moonlight. Divine body. What kind of divine body is this? Yuan Gaohan was startled. It can actually resist the power of the ancient astral wind? Although divine bodies were extremely precious, as a ninth-tier alchemist in the holy region, he had seen all kinds of geniuses and monstrous geniuses. In his eyes, existences with divine bodies were nothing special, but the fact that they could withstand the primordial astral wind was still a surprise to him. Yunqiao was a little surprised. The body of the moon could purify negative energy, but he did not expect it to be able to resist elemental power as well. However, it was only because they were still 10,000 meters away from the primordial astral wind. Otherwise, only the indestructible golden body could resist it, let alone a divine body. I didn't expect this divine body to have some skills. I didn't waste 2 billion primeval stones. Yunqiao was overjoyed. What wasn't in vain? Yuan Gaohan didn't quite understand and asked in surprise. Yunqiao gave him a look and chuckled. My divine body was exchanged for 2 billion mid-grade origin stones. A divine body exchanged for primordial stones? Yuan Gaohan's mouth was wide open. Even with his vast knowledge, he only knew that divine bodies could only be inheritances or hidden bloodlines that would be activated in the future. He had never heard of divine bodies being bought. If there was such a good thing, everyone in the world would probably have a divine body. He could not ask any more questions at this time, and Yunqiao was too lazy to explain. Instead, he turned his eyes to the void above and grinned hideously. Then, he stomped his feet and shot into the sky, turning into a beam of light and shooting toward the primordial astral wind. You're crazy, you don't want to live anymore. Yuan Gaohan's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets as he stared at Yunqiao with his mouth wide open. Like an ignited arrow, he rushed toward the terrifying gale with a brilliant white light. The surroundings of the ruins were caught in this powerful hurricane that kept spinning. The starry night had completely disappeared, and the world was a blur. Only the whistling sound of the wind could be heard between heaven and earth, and it was so painful that one's eardrums were torn. Even though Yuan Gaohan's soul didn't have a physical body, under the influence of this astral wind, he felt as if he was about to be eroded by the wind and hurriedly circulated his qi to resist. When Yunqiao was nearly 100 kilometers away from the gale, he finally could not hold on any longer. He watched the moisture in his body evaporate from his skin, and from a distance, he looked like he was on fire, only a large cloud of white smoke. A large amount of white smoke came out from the white light of the bright moon godly body. It was all the water vapor from his body. I can't get any closer, let's stop here. The demon dragon also noticed Yunqiao's strange behavior, so it hurriedly performed its soul skill and gradually fused with his main soul. The demonic transformation appeared on his body, further strengthening his body on the basis of the supreme tyrant body. It temporarily stopped the influence of the astral wind power, and the white smoke that was emitted also sharply reduced. Of course, it was also related to the water content in his body. There was not much water left to evaporate. After the soul fusion, Yunqiao's soul power instantly reached the peak of the 6th rank. His eyes turned into 2 curved blood moons, and his spiritual power gushed out of them, isolating him from the wind element around him and forming a vacuum protection zone. Then, a golden light flashed between his eyebrows, and the divine realm tablet was taken out. It flew toward the endless astral wind that connected the heaven and earth.